Here we go again. Alright, PCQIs, let's continue our series on our Listeria hazard analysis. So now we're going to be looking at the pre-weighing operation. So if you still remember the flow, going back to our staging phase, now we're gonna basically now take that product and basically take it to the pre-weigh room in accordance with the recipe/formula given for that personnel to perform the pre-weigh. Okay, so so for me, I'm looking at how the materials are being handled because they're going to be handled manually. Obviously, you're going to be using some scoops. You're going to be opening up some bags. Well, you're going to be opening first the handling of the pallet cover. Being removed. What does that look like? Opening the boxes, from the pallet, obtaining them from the pallet, obviously, and opening them. So what is that cross-contamination on that hand knife or razor to open it? And then now that you have your hands with a potential contaminant, actually touching the primary packaging that's touching the product at this point, opening that, and you are now crossing over to take a scoop. There's that hand transfer or gloved hand contaminant to the utensil, and sticking it inside the bag, pulling the samples, and you're doing your pre-weighing. So that's the concern I have as a PCQI, looking at that process. What does that look like? Now, in some companies or some facilities I work with, they have after the staging section, they have a pre-designated area where these are then removed. It's a separate room, and they remove the pallet cover as gentle and as possible, and also sanitizing some application on the box or removing it from there. Some companies, they require a second liner on the packaging prior to that. So when they unboxed it, they then do a wipe down on the liner prior to the food contact or the primary packaging, and then that is then transported to the pre-weigh room. So there's a lot of ways that I've seen it in different facilities, and what I'm sharing with you is one of the best our best practices implemented by facilities. So like I in this tutorial, or however you want to take a look at this, if you're going to apply some of these recommendations, it's really going to be based on your internal process. So I'm just going to share with you what I've seen and what I look for when I'm doing a deep dive audit. So sanitizing the primary, obviously, whatever that process is for you, opening it up, opening the zip tie up, and exposing the product is what I'm also looking at for those cross-contamination. And then I also pay attention on the pallet movement, right? Because we've identified the pallet is a potential source. Now it's going to cross over from a different zone. In this case, the staging, and to the pre-weighing. It's on the floor. Now you have the pre-weigh room. The floor is contaminated. So during the pre-weighing process, what you need to keep an eye out on this one is you dropping utensils. You drop it, you don't bend over. I never want to take a look at somebody that would grab that thing and then and continue their process. You drop something, leave it alone. Okay. And if it's a utensil that you must have and that you need, and you don't have a spare, and you need to have that part of it, if you pick it up, right, you don't put it down, you go and do what you got to do, right, to sanitize it, do all of your verification on your sanitizing process at that point, cleaning and washing it, go through the hand washing station again, and do a full hand washing procedures, and applying gloves. Okay, that's what I would like to see. That's the type of training I received and what I've been exposed to. So if I'm your auditor, or you had commissioned me to go to your facility and work with your team, these are the type of expectations that I want on the food safety measures. Some of the recommendations I already mentioned, remove the pallet cover prior to entering production area or to cross access to your pre-weigh station. That's one. For the pallet that we've talked about on the previous video, I've talked about pallet replacement through pallet inverters, or the pallet is going through some sort of sanitizing procedures that you have if it does cross over, if that's applicable for you. Make sure your SSOPs are in place during audits. You might be asked, what are your SSOPs for particular equipment, like for your sanitation procedures for scales, right? Are you washing them? Because they are going to be in zone 2 at this activity. The primary material is right there. So SSOPs are always going to be asked. And are you swabbing? Right? Are you swabbing those to verify your sanitation? Some of my clients, they said, well, we perform ATP swabbing, for that, but that just really measure your scrubbing power, right? That's how I always looked at RLUs. Is did you actually, scrub it, for those things? It does not capture Listeria. So what type of protocol on your environmental does that look like for that? So those are the type of things that I ask for my client. Now remember, when I'm also doing a deep dive audit, we're not scoring anything. I'm not, I'm there to make my observation. We do an observation report, for that to show you. So that's why we either video or take photos, which are yours. Obviously, we just use them as a point of reference for training. But anyways, going back to the pre-weighing process, so as a PCQI, you need to keep an eye out on a lot of moving parts. The actual person that's doing the pre-weighing, make sure they're fully equipped. They got everything in that room. I always ask the pre-weighing persons, like, do you have everything here that you need? Do you have a separate cart and all of the things that you need to perform this particular activity to prevent you from moving from one place to the other? Are they clean and sanitized? That's another thing that I have. I like seeing carts that are already been sanitized, that actually has this, the date and time and the person that did it and the verified by person. Those are pretty cool, right? So if you are applying those, kudos to you. For those type of controls, those are fantastic to see, and some don't. It's been sitting there, and for me, I start asking, what did you use those things for prior to performing this new activity, and you got to be able to take a look at that as part of your preventive measure. So anyways, we'll go into the next one, and this is our pre-weighing operation for pre-weighing personnel. Okay, thank you, PCQIs.